There's a website called Church Leaders that had a very interesting article, and I have condensed some of it. And I want to tell you that the author of this article specifically says that he's not bashing the church in these points. And so I have to think he's still feeling loyal to the church. So I don't want to misrepresent this website and the author of this website as holding my point of view. But I will show you what he had to say, and then we'll talk about our own conclusions of what that means. The theme of his article is 10 surprising reasons our kids leave church. And in his introduction, he points out that 70% of youth stop attending church when they graduate high school. Now, I ask you, how long can any institution continue when 70% of the young people leave that institution when they get high school age? How long can that last? Well, that is a huge hemorrhage. You know, if these kids were blood in your body, going out at this rate, how long would it take you to be dead? Not long, would it? You would bleed out very quickly. Well, he says, we all know them, the kids who were raised in church. They were stars of the youth group. They maybe even sang in the praise band or led worship. And then they graduated from high school and they leave church. What happened? That's how a lot of church people feel, a lot of the older ones. They always see this happening with the young people. They might even be involved with the church, but then they get high school age and they're gone. And you look at any church crowd and you look for the faces of the young people. You're not going to find them, or many of them. So this is a big concern that is being raised here. So what are these 10 surprising reasons that he gives? Well, realize he got these answers by actually going to some of these kids and asking them why they left. He did his own survey of these kids to come up with these answers. And this is kind of presented like a top 10 list, okay? So we're going to start with number 10 and move towards number 1. Number 10, the church is relevant. Now, a lot of times people would think the church is not relevant. But he's saying, no, the church is relevant. And he explains that we've taken a historic 2,000-year-old faith, dressed it in jeans, and tried to sell it as cool to our kids. What we're packaging is a cheap knockoff of the world we're called to evangelize. What can you say? This is a church leader saying this. And this is what the kids are seeing. You know, all of that stuff of giving them the rock music and all the latest fashions and keeping up with the times, all of that. They think that's going to help them retain the young people, and it's actually turning off the young people. Number 9, they never attended church to begin with. From a Noah's Ark themed nursery to pizza parties and rock concerts, many evangelical youth have been coddled in a not quite church but not quite world hothouse. So they never experienced church in the sense of what the scriptures say the assembly of believers should be. Instead, what they got is a steady stream of entertainment. You know, recently I got an advertisement at my home from one of the churches in the area. And they wanted to attract me and my family to their church. They don't know who I am. I read through that. I couldn't even find a mention of the Son of God. It was all about all their different kinds of programs, all their entertainment. And that's what was supposed to attract me to their church. And I think that's quite typical of what is going on. Number 8, they get smart. The agnostics and atheists treat our youth as intelligent, which is to say, for the most part, Christians don't treat them as intelligent. And so they're attracted to what the agnostics and atheists are saying. Now, I would just like to speak to this for a minute, and I would like to tell you that the agnostics and atheists don't have something better to give these kids than what you can find in the Word of God. But since most of these churches don't even teach the kids the Word of God, they've got nothing with which to fight that. Number 7, he's saying here, I think to the parents as well as the church leaders, you sent them out unarmed. Let's just be honest. Most of our churches are sending youth into the world embarrassingly ignorant of our faith. If you don't even know the first thing about what you're supposed to believe, how are you going to stand up against attacks from unbelievers? Number 6, you gave them hand-me-downs. You've tried your best to pass along the internal, subjective faith that you feel. At college, the church loses out to things with much greater appeal to the feelings of human nature. You see how that works? If all you give your kids is some kind of feeling about God, if it's all just about feelings, when they go out into the world and their feelings are stimulated by other things, why do they need the church? Community. Have you noticed this word is everywhere in the church? When our kids leave home, they leave the manufactured community. A lot of times they actually have a lot more community, for instance, at college, than they ever experienced in church, because he uses the term manufactured community. That's what a lot of it is. Number 4, they found better feelings. Rather than an external, objective, historical faith, we've given our youth an internal, subjective faith. When they leave home, they get the same warm fuzzies from the latest life coach, etc. And you know, even on TV, if you can bring yourself to watch one of these presentations by one of these televangelists, and I'm not recommending you do, okay, but I've done it, and then what you get is something like Tony Robbins or somebody like that. It's the same sort of positive thinking kind of message. That's what you get so often from the pulpits of the Christian church. Well, you know, you don't need the church to have that. Go to a Tony Robbins event. You know, you're going to get that without all the guilt, without feeling like you're not measuring up or whatever. Number 3, they got tired of pretending. In the best life now, every day of Friday world of evangelicals, there's little room for depression, struggle, or doubt. So they trumpet the message, the church is full of hypocrites. Yes, in a lot of churches, you're not really allowed to have a negative thought. You're not allowed to have a frown on your face. Everybody's supposed to be smiling all the time. You're supposed to be happy all the time. And you know what? A lot of young people come to the conclusion that's not authentic. That's not real human beings. You know, if you hit your thumb with a hammer, chances are you might say a few words you otherwise wouldn't say. That happens. That's part of life in this world. And young people, they see how very often Christianity appears on its outer veneer, but they have seen what it really is, and they see a big gap between the two. Number two, this was interesting. It says they know the truth. But it's not talking about the same truth I'm talking about, okay? It says the truth they know is this. They can't do it. They know it. All that be nice moralism they've been taught boils down to do, don't do. And you know, that's very interesting because the Christian church makes a big deal out of you don't have to keep the law. But you know what they do? They invent their own law. They have all their own do's and don'ts. Many times they have their own dress code. Doesn't come out of the scriptures, it came out of somebody's head, right? They have their own standards. Constant do's and don'ts. And so even though they talk about grace, from the standpoint of the kids, it's all do's and don'ts until it makes them feel like, you know what, I just can't do that. That's what he's saying. And he goes on here, they either think that they're good people since they don't do any of the stuff that the denomination teaches against. I'm okay. I don't need the church. I'm doing all the stuff. Or they realize that they don't meet Jesus' own words of what is required. Now that's more serious, isn't it? They actually have read the word. They've actually seen what it says. And they say, oh, I can never do that. He says there's no rest in this law, only a treadmill of works they know they're not able to meet. I think that's a big one. I think that's a very big one. And now we get to number one. They don't need it. If church is simply a place to learn life application principles to achieve a better life in community, you don't need a crucified Jesus for that. As we jettisoned the gospel, our students were never hit with the full impact of the law. Their sin before God and their desperate need for the atoning work of Christ. That is relevant, that is authentic, and that is something the world cannot offer. Our kids leave because we have failed to deliver to them the faith delivered once for all to the saints. Now, I would respectfully say, if the writer here actually believes what he's saying, that we have failed to deliver to our children and therefore to others as well, the faith delivered once for all to the saints, then is he not actually saying our church is in apostasy? What's he still doing there? Right? What is he still doing there? He should be doing what all these kids are doing. He should get out. Not to abandon Messiah, but to separate himself from something that's not the authentic gospel. Isn't that true? And look at what he's saying. The big problem of the church is they never taught the law. What? Can you believe that? How many times have you heard Christians, especially Christian leaders and pastors, say, we're not under the law? They say that all the time. It's their major mantra, right? Here is a pastor that's saying, hey, we didn't teach them the law. So they don't know they're sinners. We don't make that mistake here. We probably have our problems, but I'll tell you this, we teach the Torah. But he doesn't even get all of what the Torah is about, just going by this statement. Yes, it is to convict us of sin, but it is also telling us how we should live. And you know what? Those believers that landed at Plymouth Rock, they knew that. And they knew that the Spirit was given to us to help us live righteous lives according to the commandments of God. That we have what we need to be able to keep His commandments. I wonder if the church had actually taught all of these young people the Torah and taught them how the Spirit can help them to keep the Torah. And if they had actually experienced what it is to walk in victory in keeping His commandments, I wonder if you'd still have 70% leaving the church. I don't think you would. We have a lot of wonderful young people connected with us who love the Torah and love who they're becoming because they're learning the Torah. You know, just because something looks hard is not the easy way, doesn't make it the best way to go. Just making everything easy on people. That is not the message of Yeshua Messiah. But that seems to be the message of the Christian church. And you know, where does this all take us? This website and the author of this website as holding my point of view. But I will show you what he had to say, and then we'll talk about our own conclusions of what that means. The theme of his article is 10 surprising reasons our There's a website called Church Leaders that had a very interesting kids leave church. And in his introduction, he points out that 70% of youth stop attending church when they graduate high school. Now, I ask you, how long can any institution continue when Sevsting article, and I have condensed some of it, and I want to tell you that the author of this article specifically says that he's not bashing the church in these points. And so I have to think he's still feeling loyal to the church. So I don't want to misrepresent